But just in general, what do you use?
Just in general, what do I use? Oh, there's a long list of things, mate. Approaching 40, the list is getting longer. But if we're talking about podcasts, I use whatever my producer told me to buy when I started the podcast. So
Oh,
this is
okay.
this is
Sorry, you
all
got a
off the
producer.
well, this is all off the back of someone else's advice because I just don't have the time or the inclination to look it up myself. So I'm much better if someone just points me in a direction and says, "Get that stuff," and hopefully it will sound good. That's my
That's fair.
approach.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think so. What about you? Are you still using? Because you were using the Yeti mic the last
Yeah,
time.
I've
Are you still?
upgraded. That's lasted me a good 6 and a bit years. So
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
just upgraded to a Rode thing, and I've upgraded the camera as well because I noticed my crappy Mac was like a grainy, awful thing. And not that anyone watches or listens to this, but if they did want, it'd be awful picture quality. So yeah, thinking on things you use, do you notice? Because I can say this for both of a very similar age. All I get pushed towards now, and I'm trying not to take it personally, it is hair transplants, erectile dysfunction, and TRT. Literally. And life insurance as well.
Oh God. When you say push towards it, do you mean the algorithm is
The
suggesting you're
algorithm
going
is
down that
screaming
route?
it in my face. Yeah.
Yeah. TRT I see a lot more of now, and I listen to it, listen about it on podcasts too. So a lot of the podcasts I listen to, and I don't know if it's just the demographic I'm now sat firmly in.
Biohacking keys.
Exactly that, yeah. And I've not been tempted to explore those routes. The hair loss thing I see a lot, and a lot of my friends, without naming anyone, are starting to explore those things.
Yeah. I've got a
You
good
got
few friends I've been to Turkey.
you got no issues with hair loss though, Dan, have you? Like you've got
I,
a
I mean,
thick head of hair, and mop.
I'm not too concerned about it
Right.
at the moment. That's not to say I never will be.
Okay.
Hopefully he's not pushing those things to me because I need it. I don't think I need it. But when someone, it's kind of like when I get this, the equivalent of someone constantly buying you deodorant for Christmas. And you're like,
Oh
oh,
yeah, I
well,
do
do
understand.
I, do I need it?
Hmm.
Do I need it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Not going to make you do any awkward intros or anything, but we've got a different flavor today because you're not health fitness, but you do have an interest in that stuff.
As much as anyone would do, I guess. Again, it's an age thing more than ever now. It's longevity and just making sure I live as long as possible. But yeah, I'm not in the profession.
But I do think there will be some little pearls. Not that I tend to prompt it that way because with when you do recruitment, I think it will be of interest with some people that listen to this, especially from the health and fitness space in terms of standing out. I guess that, in terms of recruitment, that's what you do. You pull the best out of people and attributes, qualities based on their experience, everything else. Because I think a lot of people speculate that industries are saturated and possibly they are saturated, but are they competitive? And I think that's where you have the opportunity to stand out based on how you present yourself and portray any region, everything else.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think it all falls under the sort of banner of personal brand and trying to accentuate the skill set that you've got and market that. And that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. I think we're a little more comfortable with it, Dan, because we do things like podcasts and marketing in some way, shape, or form. And I don't think that means that you've got this inflated ego. I think it's just it's par for the course now. If you want to market yourself in the right way, you have to work on personal brand. So I can definitely attest to that and speak about that as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, when we met, you were still employed. And I think a lot of people, again, this will resonate with a lot of people in the health and fitness industry because many would be employed personal trainers or health fitness coaches in some aspect. And at some point, taken the plunge and gone it alone. And I know that's something that you personally experienced. And there's an expectation of, I guess, a professionalism, professional upkeep of what was an archaic look at it, if that's the right way of looking at it. Perhaps people were too cautious about filtering themselves, their personalities, and I think that speaks to what you mentioned there in terms of personal branding, and that is your way of standing out. And when people want to stand out from a crowd, not necessarily from a performative look at me, neon signs above my head kind of thing, but just giving you the creative freedom. I know, I hate to use the buzzword authenticity, mate, but be an authentic representation of yourself. Because I don't think many people are, especially, I know you see, I love seeing your stuff on LinkedIn because your stuff always stands out to me because it's John who I know
Yeah.
before I knew you from working as personal friend and everything else. It's not LinkedIn John. And you know what it's like. You've probably seen that meme that goes around on LinkedIn where it's got two pictures of Darth Vader.
Yeah.
One of them is like an extensive list of things he has been, and then it's just CFO for them. And I feel
Yeah.
like that's what LinkedIn is. It's portraying a certain image that isn't necessarily you.
There's a stigma and a stereotype of the typical LinkedIn user, and I think there's still I'm a big advocate for people from any background, and I was banging the drum for a long time for you to get on it, working in the fitness industry, and I bang the drum for creative people to get on it too. But there's definitely a stigma surrounding it that it's this corporate networking site, which at its core it is. But you do not have to get bogged down with presenting a version of you that you feel is going to attract corporate people. It takes a while as well. Like if you looked back at some of my earlier videos, they are very scripted. They are very, I'd say, vanilla. I'm trying not to upset people. Not that that's the intention now, but I'm trying to be as safe as possible, and they definitely aren't me. So you would watch those videos, Dan, having known me for however many years we've known each other, and you'd be like, what's John pretending to be there? And then I think it was really when I started my own business and went it alone, I thought I need to do this. If LinkedIn or investing in my personal brand more broadly is going to be something I have to do on a daily basis, I'm going to stop pretending to be something I'm not. And that's what I did. And it's the easiest transition I've ever made, because now it's part laziness. Like pretending to be something you're not is hard. It's an investment of energy that I
It's
just don't
actually,
have.
yeah.
So that's my take on it. The authenticity thing, I know it's a buzzword, but it is important.
Yeah. And there is that, I think, trying to be something you're not in a performative way, but then I guess the fence sitters, middle rangers, I guess like, people do worry about losing work or potential risky, they have to start business. And well, that some people do. I'm not going to say not everyone does, but I think the majority don't go out of their way for part of that whole authentic thing is just accepting not someone's cup of tea. My take on something isn't their approach.
Mm.
But that, I think, takes a bit of courage because it's something that often crops up, especially when I speak to parents. We've probably had this conversation before in private, is growing up, you want nothing more than to fit in. And actually, when I think about my children now, is of course I want them to fit in. I want them to be accepted. I don't want them to be upcast or ostracized or feel, I don't want to say special, but like they're different in some way. But then as you get older, it's those aspects of yourself you want to nurture, you want to present. And actually, there's some comfort in that because you haven't got to put on that pretense.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, God. Being a parent really sets that in such sharp focus for me now, because I've got a 5 and a 2-year-old. I don't think our kids aren't too dissimilar in age, are they? So I know you've got an older daughter, but yeah, so my 5-year-old is going through school at the moment, and it is definitely this very fine line between I want him to be him, and he's unashamedly him because he's got no filter. He's 5 years old. He'll say whatever he wants to say, and he's an extrovert. He's incredible at starting up conversations with adults as well. He does not care. Like, he's got no filter, and for me as someone, I wouldn't say I'm an introvert, but I don't want to speak to everyone. So he forces me into conversations in supermarkets and everything that I never really want to have, if I'm honest with you. But the reason it's put it in focus for me is that there's this fine line between I want him to kind of stay under the radar in a way. Like, you have to go with the flow because that's society. Like, if you stick out too much, you run the risk of having a harder time at things like school. I envision this kind of route for him through school where I want him to be himself, but I also don't want him to go through the hard stuff that I saw so many kids going through, and including me in certain aspects as I was growing up. So it's a very difficult balance. I want to embrace all these amazing qualities he's got, and at the same time, I don't want him to struggle. And that all, I guess, they just develop as you get older, don't they? Your little quirks, and you learn to embrace them, and you learn to go two fingers up to anyone that doesn't like them, because it filters out the people you want in your life and the people that you don't. And it's the same with personal branding. I'm glad I was able to loop that back. It's important
It's
because
all right. We don't have to bring it back to that.
But I mean, the
Yeah.
confidence is actually in knowing that you're going to alienate people that wouldn't have resonated with you anyway, and that probably were going to lead you into a bad working relationship. And on
Yeah.
the personal side, relationships that you just don't want to invest time and energy into later down the line. So yeah, parenting for me has really put that into a sharper focus for sure.
Yeah. I think, not that I'm one for lots of quotes, and I don't necessarily live my life by that, but one that always stands out to me is that the persona is incapable of feeling love. And I
Mm.
feel like that's often reflected on social media in a certain persona people present, which can, that masking that can be super, super taxing. And I've shared a couple of experiences on here about depression and things like that, how putting on that front can be really difficult. When you do find your stride in certain things and you do find your quirks, and not even your quirks, because they are your new normal, it's, I heard it described by Terry Crews as just learning to be unembarrassable.
Mm. Yeah.
Like it's, you, I might think, I don't know if that's a dad quirk thing, but I'm not embarrassable by any stretch of the imagination. So if something's awkward, I will be the one to say, oh, it's a bit awkward. Or if there's an elephant in the room, let's talk about the elephant in the room, because I think that breaks the ice a little bit and also reveals a bit of yourself. Because as you say, I did find a lot of my 20s perhaps were upkeeping certain relationships, contacts, and professionally, personally, that weren't necessarily serving me. And I don't know if that comes back to being a cliche people pleaser to a certain degree, because you sacrifice parts of yourself to keep other people happy. We certainly have to compromise for that. I think sometimes just working relationship, personally, professionally, whatever that is, there's
Mm.
definitely compromises there. But when you're sacrificing those things to the detriment of yourself and the benefit of others, I think longer term, that's no good for anyone's mental health.
It's so liberating when you kind of like throw those shackles off. And that might seem like a really cliche thing to say, but it does feel like that. There's a weight that falls off you when you just go, yeah. And it's not, it sounds like quite a glib thing to say because it's not easy. And I do think there's an element of you need to serve your time through these awkward moments. Like, would you have said in your mid-20s you were ready to do the things that maybe you're comfortable doing now? Like, I admire the fact that you can be the person that says this is a bit awkward, because my reaction, like physical reaction, is to cringe, and I have a very low bar for what makes me cringe, and I just want the ground to swallow me up. That is my physical reaction. I cannot get out of that. So I admire your reaction. I think that's brilliant.
What I think I say that confidently here, but it's probably context. As in, I have to feel you've got that element of confidence there and kind of how people respond. Because if it's a brand new bunch of strangers that you've never encountered before, you go, oh, that's a bit awkward, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm really sorry, Dan. Your sound has gone for a second then, so I missed about 15 seconds of it. Sorry about that.
That's all right. It was a really poor punchline. Don't worry about it. It wasn't funny at all.
I'm so sorry, mate. I can hear you
That's
fine
all
now.
right.
But
I'm not going to do it now because it's like repeating a joke. If it's not funny the first time, it's definitely not funny once it's repeated
well,
or having to explain it.
look, I can laugh. You can do it, and I can laugh, and we can just gel it all together. I'm sure it'll sound fantastic.
Well, that's most people's interactions anyway, just awkward and forced. But hey ho, that's another conversation. How have things been in general?
Yeah, it's a big question.
Broadly. Yeah, broadly.
More broadly, yeah.
Don't worry, I'm not going to poke
Okay,
or press any buttons here. I've got no agenda with this thing.
Dan, you can ask me whatever, and I'll be as honest as I can be. And while trying to say coherent as well. How things been? Yeah, on the personal side, good. The kids continue to be a challenge. I've made no sort of I sort of unashamedly have shared my story about struggling with fatherhood earlier on in my children's lives, and the transition into being a dad was very difficult for me. I feel like I've now gotten into a much better place with that. That's been a journey, but it's still challenging every day. Like, they still test me, I still test myself in various ways, so that's a journey. And but yeah, the kids are really good. My partner's really good. And then work is another thing. Like, work, it's the whole work-life transition integration thing. So working for myself, I've been running the business for 5 years now, and it's getting the balance every day is a grind. It's hard, and not helped sometimes by the amount of stuff you see on social media about very subjective opinions on what balance looks like. You need to find your own thing. But I, like most people, will get sucked down a rabbit hole of seeing, I want to cherry pick what they've got because their balance looks really good. But in reality, it might just not work in the context of your own life. So to answer your question, how have things been? I'm on a really positive route, and it's work for me daily, like to keep the balance and to keep my
I
shit
like an
together at
honest
home.
answer. I'd rather that than fine, in honesty.
Yeah.
Because interestingly, I was having this conversation with Rosa this morning because, I can't speak for her anyway, but we were just exchanging about the challenges of, I think for millennials, especially elder millennials, we were exposed to you got to be super ambitious. You got to achieve. You've got to earn lots of money. At the same time, you've got to be a parent. You've got to be a super brilliant parent at that as well. You've got to have the best home, best car. You've got to have happy children. You've got to have it all basically. And it's like most things, but the interpretation of success, where you're happy, it is so individual. It's so subjective. And we do all have a tendency to look at others based on their interpretations, who will comfortably say, I've got a very healthy work-life balance. And you'll think, I haven't got my shit together like that. I must be getting it wrong somewhere. And it's really difficult to bring it back to your circumstances, what challenges you're experiencing, your biases, your lens you look like, your life, everything that you've experienced over however old you are, and to just to be more objective with it. And I think something that often pops up, probably that many men would probably see it as more effeminate, airy, fairy kind of talk about compassion. But essentially that's what self-compassion is.
Yeah.
It's just having the ability to step back and being objective about the circumstances. And that's what allows you to be kind to yourself. Because we hear all this stuff about be kind to yourself, but that's easier said than done.
Yeah, it completely. Yeah, because there's this. I would love. I have this approach where I want to kind of take a daily mantra sometimes and just say that in my head constantly. And by the end of the day, I'm kind of like flagellating myself and saying, "No, you're shit. This has gone wrong."
Yeah,
this is why are you so crap at doing this? You're crap at getting the balance right. And I think that inner narrative can be pretty toxic and not a healthy thing. But you're right. I think societally, because you say success is subjective, but I do think societally there is almost a one size fits all, broadly, a generalization of what success looks like, especially for people approaching 40 as we are. I'm not outing you there, Dan, am I? Everyone knows you're approaching 40. Is that common
no,
knowledge?
definitely not. I think it was either that or a hard paper round, There's some tells there, and you haven't given anything away. You haven't chucked you under the bus. But no, I think, and just to add a layer of that, just to briefly interrupt you, because I'm going to let you carry on, is when you introduce the aspects of being self-employed, entrepreneurial, having to run the show for yourself. So you're not answerable to the man. So you've got to dictate all this yourself as well.
Exactly. And there's this is very much a first world problem because I feel very fortunate and almost privileged to have taken the opportunity to work for myself. But it does come with pros and cons. Like all of the driver is your own. I'm self-employed and literally I work on my own. So there's no one, and don't get me wrong, I've got a great support network, but there's no one in my business that I can turn to after a shitty call or a client is calling me to have a go at me and I can't vent. So a lot of that, again, that inner narrative is you're crap because you've just been told you're crap. You've got nowhere for that to dissipate. And that, I think that might be one of the hidden things that people look at and see. They might romanticize the thought of working for yourself. You'll know this, Dan, not having people to share with sometimes. And there's pros and cons to that. I love working on my own 70% of the time. But when you need a bit of a support network around you, that can be quite difficult. So for anyone that's got a romanticized view of being self-employed, there's just so many pros and cons, and it will change on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, just I guess revisiting the point about this generalized version of success that we're all under some degree of pressure to reach. trying to block that out, I think takes a lot of energy, and making it subjective. Taking some time to realize what enough is, and to be able to define what enough is. I think that's another thing that I'm still striving to do, because it's, you can keep working your ass off, but when is enough? And that's
When are you enough, John? When are you enough?
Yeah, I mean, at various points, Sophie
No, I
will
want to
tell
be,
you I'm
I
enough all the time.
genuinely,
Oh, she's
I will
had
fall.
enough.
Oh, right, she's had enough. I was going to say that crowbar the dad joke in there, but dad joke approved. But I do think there's some validity to that. I kind of frequently make that there, because I do think it comes down to, for a lot of people, certainly in my own journey, is those feelings of self-worth.
Mm.
Because that's really the basis of most things. Is if we look at enoughness and what is enough, it's like, do I earn a certain amount of money? Does it allow me to live the lifestyle I need to, and allow me the time off I need?
Mm.
I'm not going to say everyone does, because we're in the middle of an economic crisis, and there are many people that are really struggling out there. So I don't want to flippantly say most people have enough, but I think the broadest proportion of probably people that listen to this, if you look around, you look at living the simplest life possible in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is most of us have got everything we need. We do have enough, but a lot of the drive comes from us feeling enough. Perhaps we have to put something on, we have to achieve others, we have to prove something to ourselves, whether that's immersed in work, whether that's achieving something publicly, whether that's earning a certain amount of money. There's a lot to be said for status as well in now, because status is such a huge part of societal dynamics, and the proverbial flex, what you got, what car you drive, house you live in, and everything, what holidays you go on. Even to the point I find, even around Christmas, the subtle, subconscious things where the Christmas trees with thousands of presents around it that people splash all over social media, which is little to do with we're having a wonderful Christmas, and more to do with look at what I've got.
That's a great point, yeah, because you could be posting a picture of your glamorous tree with all your presents, and your house could be burning down behind you. Like, it's a snapshot in that moment that so many people put so much value into. And I'm not knocking anyone that does that, because a lot of my friends would post pictures of their Christmas tree on Instagram around December, and that's fine. Some of them in November, and they are tenuously friends now, because I don't agree with that. But, yeah, it's so, I think we've discussed this so many times before. Social media is just this little snapshot, this little Polaroid without any context around it whatsoever. So it's very dangerous to get caught up in that. But we're humans, so we do, inevitably.
If it isn't pressing too much, and because we are speaking about work, self-worth, and everything else, you kind of mentioned struggling in that first step into parenthood. And it's certainly something that I struggled with. I think I might have mentioned it on here before, but post Mila was the first time I'd ever heard of postpartum depression mentioned in men. And having experienced depression before in my life or across my life, and going to the doctors and having that conversation, I was a little bit baffled. And I guess there not only was an extra element of stigma and self-stigmatization, but also, how can I bloody moan about this? I didn't grow that child. I'm not still nursing that child. Most of the demands aren't of me, but yet I'm experiencing this thing. Right? And I think any parent can attest to the fact that nothing can prepare you for it. It flips your life upside down. You can just about look after yourself, and now you've got this small creature. And I've got to keep that as well.
Yeah, it's a good point. I'm more than happy to share, and I think from the conversations I've had where I've been most honest about this, then I hope I've found that they've helped other people. So I'll be as transparent as I can with as much as I can remember as well, because I think there's a thing about time changes your perception. But yeah, so I had this vision when Sophie and I decided to try and have kids, and we're fortunate in that regard. We made that decision. I had this vision in my head that I was going to be the best dad. It wasn't a question. I knew I was going to be the best dad. What best dad looked like, I couldn't define. I just knew I was going to be great at it. I was writing letters to my unborn baby every day. Didn't know what we were going to have at the time. I was playing music into Sophie's stomach, with headphones and stuff. It was romanticized, and the pregnancy was perfect. Sophie would say this, she loved being pregnant. And then the reality when Finley arrived, my eldest, was just, I think it felt like the walls had come crashing down. The struggle that I felt in the first, well, that went on for about 2 years, if I'm honest with you, but the struggle that I felt in the first few weeks of him arriving was not this, the experience wasn't this moment of, I'm so full of love. It actually felt like I'd lost quite a lot. It felt like I'd lost my partner, because quite rightly, their focus is taken up with raising this new life. And actually, something that's worth saying, I think, dads, you can be there to support your partner, but when you're directly supporting your baby, you feel quite redundant at that point. So that
I'd
was my
describe
experience.
as a shit assistant manager.
Yeah, quite like ineffective. Or just a cheerleader. You can be there clapping and shaking your pom-poms, but really what you're doing is kind of, ineffectual in a way. So I was going through all of that. And in my head, it's that in a narrative. Why am I feeling like this? Like, I've got everything to be thankful for. Like, everyone's healthy. I've got this beautiful baby boy, and I did love him. I just didn't feel like it was the love that I felt was going to come the minute he was there. Like, opened his eyes, and I was like, shit. I got that feeling, and it might have dissipated after a day, and then it was this sense of shell shock and like, oh crap, this is not how I thought it was going to be. I started beating myself up about that. I started suppressing a lot of it. I started faking this, what I thought I should be feeling. And when you do that for long enough, it's inevitably going to start wearing on you. And it did. And it wore on me. It wore on Sophie. There was a lot of, I guess, anger towards the situation, a lot of resentment that the romanticized view wasn't matching up with the reality that I thought it would be. And I've got to be honest, it was, speaking about it with Sophie, or getting to the point where our relationship was very rocky at a point, really was the best thing that could have ever happened, because it forced me down a road of things that I would never have considered beforehand. So therapy being the main one, that led to a diagnosis of PTSD. So rather than postpartum depression, which I may have been suffering with as well, I'm unsure. But at the time, my therapist, after about 2 months of going to him on a weekly basis, said, I think you've got PTSD, because the labour for me was quite traumatic. And again, can you imagine as a man saying that the labour is traumatic for you? As someone observing it, like, that's societally, you say that to enough women and they will lynch you, in my opinion. Like, to say that but I
Correct.
thought
Wow.
Sophie was no. I thought Sophie was gonna die at various points.
Mm.
And that's the same that you would feel on, let's say, a battlefield or something, watching people in these life. I'm not saying it's a direct comparison for anyone that's going to jump on that, but fearing for someone's life is a feeling that I never thought I'd have to go through, especially someone that I love deeply. And then it was these questions about the, even asking yourself as simple as, if it comes to a choice between Sophie and the baby, who do I choose? Like, all these things go through your head. And I know I've been going along a while, Dan, so I'm gonna close it now. But
No, you're good. You're good. Don't
I
worry.
think therapy for me was just realizing I wasn't mad, realizing that having feelings of resentment is a very natural thing for a dad, mourning the loss of your relationship, because you lose it in the way that it was. It's a transition into something completely different, because the third person into your relationship is your world, and rightly so. But that leads to further down the line ensuring that you're still a couple, and making sure you've still got your relationship and you hold that in a slightly different place. And I'm not going to start to therapize, because I've been through both one-to-one therapy and relationship therapy, so I can basically secondhand regurgitate everything I've learned. But yeah, I think in a nutshell, my experience of fatherhood was very different from what I thought it was going to be. And yeah, and it was hard. It was hard to take. And it's still, sometimes I will still sit there and go, fuck is this? Like, is this real life? Is this real life? And it's kind of just getting back onto an even keel and accepting that, and moving forward in a much more positive mindset, which I'm fortunate enough to be in, but it's taken work. It's taken a lot of self-exploration, a lot of discovery. and a fair amount of therapy to get me there.
Thanks for sharing that, mate. I think that's incredibly insightful. And as you say about self-exploration, it's such a difficult thing. And if it's something you've never shown a concern, not you personally, just generally everyone, never shown a concerted effort to explore, to do that alone is difficult. So for most people, so it was mine as well, is therapy is a step into that. Because the ironic thing about self-awareness is you need an element of being self-aware to kind of expand on that idea. And when you're not, or you're not as much as you perhaps need to be, is that's where appropriately qualified professionals are there to guide you in the right direction. Now, I've shared quite a bit of my personal experiences on here, but I think what you spoke to, especially that grief, you're grieving your last life almost, and you're emerging into this new identity of other pressures you'd never really thought about, or you hadn't thought about in full because you had no idea. And I think that's a limitation of empathy is we're all kind of defined by our own real world experiences. And until you've actually lived that, it's very difficult to empathize fully with someone. And then when you're in the midst of it, as you say, and you daren't complain because what have you got to complain about? I think would be our justification in our minds. It's just that, like, who'd you go to vent about these things? And again, I don't want to make this a complaint of the older millennial thing. Break you through that classic male archetype or the stoic, not very hands-on, because I think, for men of our generation, as well as we perhaps exposed to, not the most helpful aspects of being a man was, making a concerted decision that I'm not going to be that, I'm going to be extra. But with that comes weight as well. And because I want to be a hands-on dad, I want to be a loving dad, I want to be the best partner, the most supportive partner in the world. No one really talks about the bickering in the night and the resentment in the initial phases. That both, because I think with Mia especially, we tried so many bottles, we tried so many formulas, we tried so many dummies. She just wanted mum. I desperately wanted to help as much as possible. She was having none of it. Rosa, understandably, probably resented me a little bit for not being able to do those things because that's a lot asked of her.
Yeah.
Those initial 6 months where baby's waking every 5 seconds for milk, she just wants mum. So I'm up and I would stay up to show kind of support, but equally she's sore, she's exhausted, and putting that pressure on yourself to uphold certain duties in your relationship, maintain that relationship. And then because of the social, again, frameworks, that in terms of paternity, that might come up for, I think, with recruitment, paternity leave and whatnot. I only took 2 weeks off. Then it's on her. Like, I'm coming back, I'm doing the best I can, and I'm feeling like I'm not doing enough. She's possibly thinking that. And it's, having those awkward conversations, those difficult conversations when you're both utterly exhausted and your lives have been flipped upside their head.
I've got to say, Dan, I wanted to leave it quiet. It did break up a lot of that.
Did it?
The audio.
Even though just let me run with it.
I'm really sorry.
That's all right.
No, well, I'll let you run with it because I think if you can get to the end of that and then edit it, then you're all right. You've not got me interjecting because I know what you were saying was really important. So if it comes through clear,
I'm not going to edit it. I don't edit this, mate. I don't edit it. It's too much hard work. No, I don't.
Right.
Did I not brief you on that?
I'm sorry. No,
that's all right. I don't edit
I like it raw. I like it raw. No, that's true. Well, I heard a lot of it, and I know the points that you were making were fantastic. Yes, I think.
That's
the other point I wanted to just make, which I hope is really related to the discussion we're having, is this. I will kind of share one thing that my therapist has said to me, like from a generational standpoint. Us as fathers we're going through a social experiment at the moment because our generation of dads, or let's say our dad's generation, the expectation was still very much on going out, hunter-gatherer, earn the money while the mums were at home looking after the kids. We are the first generation that are the expectation is that we do that, but then we do the nurturing side of it too. And my therapist says this is a social experiment. This is the first time in history that we are starting to transition into this way of raising children. And there is more pressure on men. I'm going to say it. There's more pressure on men now to be more than we've ever been. And it's hard because no one's had to go through this before. We've not got our parents telling us, "Oh,
I can already hear outraged women saying, "This is what we've been exposed to for years."
Yeah,
It's a baptism for us.
Completely that. I'm not saying.
No, I know you're not. I'm teasing.
I'm not. And I'm not diminishing the role that mums have played for thousands of years, millennium. But it is a social experiment for us, and I think the pressure can be. Yeah, it's very heavy because I want to be a hands-on dad and I want to be supportive of my partner and I want to be successful in business. And I think there's also an element of that, you can be made, whether that's your inner narrative or not, to feel selfish or guilty for wanting to spend time at work and doing your own thing and having success that is completely self-serving. Yes, you're going to be able to support your family, but it's self-serving. Like I want to achieve things for me. I want the plaudits for things that I have done off the back of my hard work that aren't directly benefiting my family. And sometimes I think there's a narrative that can make you feel a bit selfish for wanting that too.
Yeah, but also it's quite difficult to change because I think all of the subconscious programming we're being exposed to as young boys growing into this new, as you say, social experiment that's kind of what you're programmed to believe as well. So is that our belief or is that society believes of us? To separate the two, is it just us? Because you've been told growing up is that at some point you're going to, have to support a significant other. You're going to have to earn a certain amount of money. Being a man is this, that, the other. And that's changing. So you're constantly in battle with your subconscious almost. And I've read this idea, this hypothesis around threatened masculinity. And because, obviously women have gone through their strife with feminism and equal opportunities. And I think what we're talking about there is really equity. I think when people talk about equality, that's not quite on the mark, is equity more than equality, because there are differences, categorically there are differences, whether that's personally, biologically, etc. Let's not go down those lines. But this idea of threatened masculinity is that the societal pressures on men, this is what, the hypothesis suggesting, is that because women are capable of so much more, they don't need a significant other. I say like need in air quotations is women now don't need men for that sort of thing. There's almost been this revolt from type Donald Trump characters that are doubling into this archetypal view of what a man should be. Well, I've got to be aggressive. I've got to earn this certain amount of money. And they still speak to a young audience. So I think even for our generation, the ones now coming through, they've been exposed to more open-minded men speaking more frankly about the societal pressures to still a double-down version of what our parents went through.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I think there was, I don't know if you know him personally. Is it Chris Williams or Chris Williamson?
Chris Williamson, modern.
I listened to his guest spot when he was on the Steve Bartlett podcast, and I know there was a lot of backlash, I think, for some of the things that he was discussing on that. And I have to be honest,
I don't think I listened to that one.
Okay, well, I won't go into too much detail because I feel like
I know there was a lot of discussion around gender dynamics, and I don't know. I get the impression certain individuals, they fully buy into this evolutionary psychology, and that he falls into this naturalist fallacy that because evolutionary we have been a certain way, that we should be a certain way still.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a good basis for the discussion, and this kind of this return almost to those kind of like I don't know, these innate instincts that we have, and basically it's our move away from that is leading to, I don't know, lower numbers of people having sex, and as men, we should be getting back to this thing. We should be wanting to strive for earning more money. We should be wanting to strive for status, because women are still looking for that. So it's almost ignorance or denial to say that women aren't looking for these status symbols, and they're not, because they now are achieving more. And there's again, whether it's societal pressure for them, or whether it's just this this movement and this evolution, they are now achieving more, so they want people that achieve higher. So I think really it felt like it was banging the drum for men to get back on that kind of status ladder and strive for more, because that's the only way you're going to be able to attract a mate. And I'm using air quotes just for anyone that's listening and not watching. So yeah, I think I was one of these people that I didn't comment or leave any reviews or anything, but I was definitely left feeling a bit like I really hope people don't think he's speaking for the whole of the male race when they listen to that.
I guess that's the problem with all of these podcasts, is that we tend to latch on to the polarized despite knowing better.
Yeah.
When we all know really that life exists in the unsexy grey.
Yeah.
And, people go onto podcasts, they have huge platforms, and they speak so broadly and definitively for a whole population.
Yes.
I don't pretend to speak for every man. I don't pretend to understand everything about a woman's experience, but I think we can all try to have a bit of empathy for each other's situations. And, I know people like to clutch at straws and they like to cherry pick data and certain studies, but again, that isn't reflective of nearly 8 billion people on the planet now. Is near enough 8 now, isn't it? How can they possibly? So it's, there's sample sizes and there's people that of certain traits, personality types that do want to participate in these sort of studies. There's, women generally are notoriously underrepresented in scientific data as well. So, where are we getting this information? But I need to speak so confidently. I don't know. I'm saying not any individual specifically, but when I think about these things, I would rather be on the kind of imposter syndrome, questioning my own knowledge base and having the humility to always be able to change my mind and learn something from other people than where I think just the space, the whole space, is we have this tendency to confuse confidence with competence. And when people speak confidently, we naturally, well, I say many people naturally buy into everything they have to say. I think there was I'm going to refer to a study now. It's not even a study. I think it's just a speculative piece about why Donald Trump has so much buy-in from his followers. Because he speaks so confidently. He speaks with such conviction. He must know what he's talking about. And that's essentially the dynamics of a lot of these setups and status and people that have influence, exposure to lots of people. When they speak with such conviction, they must be competent. They must know exactly what they're saying. But I'd rather be this side of the slightly insecure imposter syndrome than the Dunning-Kruger know-it-all then.
Yes, I completely agree with. And I think it's just, I don't know. My question is always, when I see a really confident communicator falling on their sword and just committing to something they're saying, is that, do they really feel that way? Is that, how much of that is training? How much of that is in, like, you can be a great communicator, but how much of that is this natural belief that what you're saying is correct? Or are you just kind of spinning a line, doing it in a way because you've had some great training as being a communicator? I think from my side, there's always, going back to personal brand to a degree on this, and authenticity. My thing is very much around, I'd rather be self-deprecating, sit on that side of like the self-deprecation, because I don't know everything, and I want people to see that I'm not there being this oracle. This is really echoing your statement, I guess, but I'm not there to be this oracle. I'm there to give you my opinion, and what I'm saying, the advice I'm giving, even on things like LinkedIn and in the very small space that I operate in, which is recruitment and job search tips and all these things, I can only tell you it from my angle and based on my own experience. I'm never going to be the guy that sits there and goes, we should be doing this, or pointing a finger and saying you should be doing this. It's only based on experience, and it's such a siloed view that we've got. It's you share your own perspective, but don't go and bang the drum for a whole gender, which I feel like that podcast was doing, going back to the Chris
Yeah.
Williams one. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's just one of those, we know better, but we choose not to buy into that. So I was having a conversation with someone I work with at the moment about, funny enough, the Stephen Bartlett one. I was talking about a Jason Fung episode, and another one with Tim Spector, and how these sensationalist titles and clickbait things are taken from it, like ridiculous stuff, like calories don't count or whatever it may be. And despite everyone knowing better, they still watch those. They still get pent up. I've heard it referred to as rage baiting. That's
Yeah.
essentially what it's there for. Is deliberately polarized, because when we understand that people like Stephen Bartlett, my grievance with Stephen Bartlett, not personally, I don't know him personally, but the general setup of the podcast is just that I think we've got resources to fact check. You have got this huge team. You have got these bunch of producers behind you. I do think you have a ethical responsibility to do your due diligence, to actually check up on some of the things that you're putting out there. But from a business standpoint, his background is social media. It's on the basis of click revenue, sensationalist titles, rage, positive, negative comments, whatever they may be, just people watching your video for all of the wrong reasons. Put that on YouTube. You've got recurring revenue from that, building your channel, building your audience. You've now got a bunch of new listeners that are listening to you for perhaps the wrong reasons, but they're new listeners. These people don't care.
Yeah.
I think sometimes when we look at these, we attach our moral compass to other people.
Yes.
And I think it'd be interesting, your thoughts on this actually, when it comes to business and morality. Sometimes and this is again a hugely individual thing, is the lines get blurred, because I see quite a lot in the coaching space. From I one-to-one coach, 200 people. Like, how much time is that actually coaching? Like, that is then arguably, it becomes like an ethical responsibility thing from I'm misadvertising myself, and I'm leading people into false expectations of what I can actually deliver.
I think that's a really good point. Yeah, because how many hours are in a day? How many hours are in a week? How are you really doing that and providing a service that probably warrants the money you're charging for it too?
But I guess you see it from a scaling perspective, because there's a lot of emphasis in the health and fitness space at the moment that to grow your business. And I'm not anti-capitalist. We all need a certain amount of money that makes the world go round. But if you're offering something that's one-to-one and bespoke, but you're claiming to attract hundreds of people, it's not what it is. And it is just on the basis that you want to get as many people through the door as possible, because you want to make as much money as possible. And if that's the case, that's fine. Just own it. Don't frame it as something that it's not, something morally superior when it's not.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And I think with anyone that is working on their own, it's much better
because
to be transparent.
you're proudly a one-man band. I'm going to interject there and just say that, because I hope you don't want me sharing this as well. I'm not throwing you the bus, but you could expand if you wanted to, because then you could.
Yeah, I think that's very, and I'm often asked why I don't. And as the business grows, and I say the business grows, as the business survives, as the business continues to go over the it'll be 5 years I've been running it in September. There are more questions that I sort of pose myself. How long do I want to be doing this for? I need to have a degree of motivation, and dare I say, it's a buzzword in my podcast, passion for what I do, especially when it's only you, because you can't pass it on to anyone else. So I do think about the succession of what that looks like, and I don't mean handing it down to my sons at some point, because if they get into recruitment, I've done something wrong, in my personal opinion. But so I am proudly a one-man band. I think there's so many positives for both the clients I work with and the people that I operate with, because there is nowhere to hide. If I fuck up, it is me. I'm holding my hands up to it. My brand is me. Bit of ego attached to that, probably. Also, the thought of bringing people in and leading them, managing them. I have problems managing myself on a daily basis. So trying to do that and all the stuff that comes with that is quite hard. So there's a degree of by design, and some of it is quite self-serving. and others is because I don't think I'll be in the position to be the best manager of people, and I can't bang the drum about the people that I place going to work with the best managers if I'm not embodying that. I guess they're the three reasons why I'm just focused on me. But to go back to the original point, I guess if it is just you, people buy into it so much more if you're honest about it. When I first started the business, if you went on my LinkedIn profile, if you went on my website, I was pretending to be something bigger. It was all we. We do this, we at Global Tech Collective. The minute I changed it to personal pronoun and just went I, everyone just respected it so much more. Just because you're just not pretending to be something you're not. So embracing that has made a big difference. And I did it pretty quickly. It's probably 9 months in that I just had to scrap the we and just embrace the I guess, and go from there.
Yeah, I really respect that. And it's, as you say, it's by design, as in, I guess, not always in balance, but you have a certain number of hours you'd like to work, certainly time you'd like off, certainly time you'd like with Soj and the kids. And being self-employed, that is one of the pros. When you're managing others, you're there putting out fires and everything else, and obviously lots of other worries to manage.
Yeah.
But I do think, strangely, and you're probably going to think, what's he talking about? That will resonate with a lot of people in the health and fitness space, that there is this pressure that unless, much like the views of success, unless you're growing in business and that year on year you're making more money or you're employing more people, then in some way you're failing. Whereas I'm not professing to be successful by anyone else's stretch of the imagination. I think I am, on a good day, being nice to myself and within the realms of expectations of myself. But that is because I only want to work with people once a month. Therefore, I have a certain number, a certain limit in terms of people I can work with. And for me to try and dilute that process and be something that I'm not would be on the basis of motives and incentives to just make more money.
Yeah.
And there's always more money to be made.
Yeah. And I get the impression, Dan, that just doesn't align, or I know it doesn't align with your values.
Well, you've known me to be a stubborn arsehole for many, many years.
I'd not say arsehole. You are definitely stubborn, but not in a bad way. I think that's a positive trait.
I just for the sake of anyone listening to this, just to put context, I've known John for years. And over that time, I've just imposed my friendship on him, whether he likes it or not.
I think there could be an argument
And
that it happens the other way around.
No, but yeah, I can say that honestly, with you, because I don't want to say I'm pretty transparent. I don't think social media, podcasts, anywhere is appropriate to be entirely transparent, but at least to the point that I am who I am. I represent myself how I like to be seen, because that's who I am. I can't be anything else. I'd be really shit at being someone else. And I know you're very much got that mindset as well.
I think it comes with experience, doesn't it? I think, again, you asked me at 25. At 25, when I first started working in recruitment, I've got clients ringing me up and asking me, "Oh, did you watch the football at the weekend?" And rather than having the confidence to say I don't follow football, I really couldn't care less, I go, "Yeah," and I get the BBC scores, I get the fixtures up, and I would cite back the fixtures rather than own up and say I do not give a flying fuck. Like, I just don't care about football. You can talk about it till the cows come home. And now I do. Like, go, "Oh, do you know what?" I don't say I couldn't give a flying fuck, but I say, rugby's more my thing, or I try and gear it round to a sport. And then maybe you get a bit of radio silence. But again, do I want to be investing time in people that just want to talk about football? No offense if you love football. I'm just not a massive fan of it. Would I have said that at 25? No. Just load me with football facts and I'm going to nod along and say, yeah, really great. Mm-hmm. But I think you have to earn your stripes to a degree. And if I could go back and give my 25-year-old self some advice when starting out, I'd be like, just own it. Just own yourself and be unashamedly you a lot earlier. That would be the advice if I had a time machine, I think.
Said it more than once or twice. My idea of hell is going to the pub and watching football. But at 25, I wouldn't have the confidence to say that, because not only are you putting on a persona, I think, when you're much, much younger, I don't think like even earlier than that, in your late teens, into early 20s, but you're saying things intentionally because you know the response it's going to get.
Yeah.
It's almost like doubly deceiving yourself and others at the same time,
Mm.
which is why it ultimately makes you feel really shit about yourself.
Yeah.
And you come to either through self-awareness and your own self-discovery, or a baptism into finding out hard ways. Can't keep that mask on. You just can't.
No.
Oh, you can, but you're going to suffer for it
Yeah.
at some point. At some point, it's going to spill out.
Yeah. That disconnection from yourself, who you truly are, and this is on the back. I'm saying this on the back of therapy for a few years again, but that is a really dangerous place to be, because it leads to other things. You start telling yourself lies, and lies are really deep rooted, and they can force that separation from that who you really are even further, because you start believing them. And when you start believing the lies you're telling yourself, I love football, I really like going out and getting pissed in my mid to late 30s now, it's a disconnect, and that's a dangerous place to be, in my opinion.
On that wisdom, I think you will wrap it up there, sir. If people do want to listen to your podcast, or they are interested in recruitment, you as a person, just want to look at your Marbella bikini pics from 2013, where do they go?
I don't know where you'd find the Marbella pics anymore, but if you want to listen to the podcast, you can find links to that on my LinkedIn profile. So just in case you didn't know, my name is John Hawker. You can find me on LinkedIn. There is
I do go
Jobsworth.
to the effort. I will put that in there.
Thank
Your
you.
actual
Appreciate
name.
it. There is Jobsworth. Jobsworth.com is the podcast website. If you are interested in either finding a job or you are working for a company that are hiring, the recruitment website is globaltechcollective.com. And I think that's about as much self-promotion as I'm comfortable with, Dan. I think that's enough.
That's all right. I mean, jobs work is such a fantastic, given your profession, and the waffle is such a fantastic name for a podcast.
It's I credit my brother with that. So I was working up in Dorking in my brother's studio, and he just came out of it just completely out of the blue, like lightning had struck, and there was just nothing else that we were going to call it after that. So really pleased with the name. Yeah, it's a shit podcast, but great name.
Yeah, all right. Bear that in mind. On that note, cheers for listening.
Yeah, thanks guys. Appreciate it.